What's up, guys? Today I want to talk about how I structure my kids classes. I'm going to do this in case any of you guys are interested in starting a kids program, or if you maybe just want to hear a different perspective about how other instructors run their kids programs. So here's how I run a basic kids class. So in the beginning, I do a 5-minute warm-up. So this is very simple, rolling your arms forward, backwards, doing twists side to side, jogging in place, that kind of thing. And then I do 3 technical exercises to have them warm up as well. So I have them do sprawls, because that's a very basic movement that they're going to need to know. Most importantly, I have them do break falls. And this is one that I highly, highly recommend you guys always have your kids do before every single class. Have them practice break falls. They don't need to practice every single kind of break fall, but I would say side break falls are probably the most important one that they can know, like ages 6 and up, they need to know. The kids that are a lot younger, the side break falls are a little bit harder to teach, but you can still do it. You just have to do it a little bit differently. You'll have to have them squat down into the fall. I found that to be an effective way to teach 4- and 5-year-olds. But it's really important that they learn, because they need to know how to fall safely, and their body needs to react in the right way when they get taken down so that they don't get hurt. So side break falls, super important. You can also teach back break falls and front falls, although back break falls are not as good as side break falls because there's a greater chance that you'll hit your head. So I would say stick with side falls. And front falls are really easy, right? You just bring your arms in front of your face and make sure that you don't land on your head. So make sure your kids are doing side break falls at the very least. And the last warm-up that I do is the standing base, because for kids, it can be a slightly complicated motion, but it's something you ingrain in them that when they're grappling, this is how you get up, right? You don't turn away and face away from your opponent. You don't sit up straight into them where they can push you back down. You create distance and you separate yourself, right? So those are my warm-ups. I do them every single day. It takes about 5 minutes with a class of like 15 to 20 students to get through that. And if you have a new student, I would recommend that an assistant instructor in the class help that new student out with the technical warm-ups so that they can get used to it. And next class, they'll be integrated into what the other students are doing much more quickly, and they won't need extra time. So I would take that extra time to make sure that the new students are learning all the technical warm-ups. And if that takes a few more minutes every class, that's totally fine. I don't think that's a big deal. Now, when it comes to the technical instructions, I try to keep it to 20 to 30 minutes, okay? Anything more than 30 minutes, it's hard for kids that are, ages 6 to 8 to pay attention for, more than 30 minutes at a time without grappling or doing anything like that. So I usually teach 2 techniques a day. At most, I'll teach 3, but almost every day in my curriculum, I teach 2. Some days I even only teach 1 if it's a particularly difficult motion and I need to break it down into several steps. The best thing you can do when you're teaching kids in this kind of technical instruction is break things down into steps and have them call out every single step of the move, right? So if I'm going to break down my knee cut into a few steps, right? My first step would be, okay, we're going to stand in a staggered stance and we're going to put pressure on the legs, right? That's step 1. And I would have the kids know that that's step 1. Then step 2, okay, I'm going to circle to the outside and I'm going to drop my knee down over the top of my partner's leg, right? So that's step 2. And then step 3 is, reach for the far side underhook. Step 4 is slide through. So now they have 4 steps, and I'm going to repeat the motion, calling out every step. And then at the very end, before we go into doing the technique, I'm going to have the kids guess what step is next. So I'll be like, all right, what's step 1? And they'll raise their hands, and I'll call on somebody, and they'll say, okay, you put pressure on the guard, and you stand in staggered stance. Good. And then step 2, you circle and drop down. So the kids are active and engaged in the demonstration of the technique, right? They're trying to answer questions. They're trying to make sure that they get it right. And you can even have the kids demonstrate it on each other. I've also found that to be highly effective, that the kids are more likely to pay attention when it's another student doing it to somebody else. So if you have a student in class that's been in class for a while, maybe you're repeating the curriculum and they've already seen it and you know that they understand the technique, or at the very least that they could be easily walked through it, you could have that student demonstrate the technique. Meanwhile, you're calling out what the steps are and giving instruction to the kids. This makes sure that they're engaged and they're paying attention to what's going on. Now, after the technical instruction, and of course, after the technique has been demonstrated, you partner them up and then you have them work, all right, 2 times each or 3 times each or whatever you want to do until you walk around, you make sure everybody's got the technique right, and then you move on, okay? And I do not move on to the next technique until everyone has gotten it reasonably well, okay? If you're having difficulty doing that, maybe what you're showing is a little bit too advanced, or there's a different way that you could show it to make it more, make it easier for the kids to understand. So that's the advice I have for the technical instruction. Now, 10 to 15 minutes of my class is positional drilling. So that depends on what we've worked that day, right? If we've done a guard pass, then we're going to do positional drilling, sweep or submit drills. So the bottom person will be trying to sweep and get on top or get a submission. If they're competition team, right, I only let my competition team kids do submissions. That way I don't teach a student that doesn't have the maturity to handle that information, a submission. But in general, positionally, the bottom person is trying to sweep and get on top. The top person is trying to pass guard. So even if they don't know submissions, right, it's a positional drill. So it doesn't matter. You can still accomplish your objective. Let's say we work something from the front headlock. Maybe we work snap downs and then we work on circling the turtle and taking it back. Well, the drill is going to be, we're going to start in the front headlock. Top person, their goal is going to be to take dominant position. Either take back control or if they roll over, try to get to the mount. The bottom person's goal is going to be to recover guard. So we always have a positional objective during these drills so that the kids understand what the positional hierarchy is and how they can progress through it to get into a more dominant position. Even a kid that knows submissions and is maybe grappling a kid that doesn't know submissions, therefore that kid is not allowed to do submissions, they will still get a lot out of this drill because they're working their positional transitions. And the better position you can get in jiu-jitsu, the higher the likelihood you'll get a submission, obviously. So these are really important skills, and they're fundamental skills, way more important than submissions that kids need to work. Other positional drills, takedowns, right, where both kids try to take each other down. Once the takedown occurs, you stand back up, you have them keep going. And, you know, pin escape drills. So you can start in side control, bottom person has to escape back to guard, top person has to transition to a more dominant position. So maybe they go to mount, maybe they go to back, etc. Or they just try to hold the pin for 30 seconds. So you could do that drill as well. If you're working mount or back control, the top person has to maintain that pin for a set amount of time. You can set a timer. When the timer runs out, if the person on top is still in their position, then they win. If the person on bottom has escaped back to guard, or they get on top, then they win. So these are all the kinds of positional drills that I do. And they're very, very useful for getting kids to understand what they need to do. And you know, you always base it around what you've worked on in class. So lastly, at the very end of my kids' classes, okay, I do about 5 minutes of games, okay? These games do not need to be jiu-jitsu related, although, you know, tug of war or sensei says, which is just Simon says, you know, geared towards martial arts. They're nice because the kids focus on their grips for tug of war, they focus on their positioning and getting low, and it's a fun game for them. And Sensei Says obviously is a listening game, so they can practice those skills. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? You know, I do dodgeball with the kids. I do, you know, freeze tag, you know, that kind of stuff. Games that the kids like to play. The reason I do this is we did 10 to 15 minutes of positional drilling before we went to the games, right? What if a kid was partnered with people that just constantly dominated them and they lost every single match? Well, you could say, well, suck it up, right? That's part of it. And that's true, you know, but when you're dealing with younger kids, you don't want them to get too dissuaded so that they continue to train, right? If they get so dissuaded because they're constantly losing that it's not fun for them anymore, the likelihood that they quit is much higher. So I always end class on a positive note for everybody, right? Even if you got your butt completely destroyed during the positional drills, you get to play a few games at the end, just, you know, 2 or 3 games in the last 5 minutes of class so that you end the class with a good memory, right? You end the class with, okay, I had fun during the games. You know, the drills were tough, but I had a good time. I got to play with my friends, right? So I highly recommend you guys do that. I think it does help improve student retention, and it does not affect, you know, the seriousness of the positional drills, right? You know, the kids are trying to beat each other and get to dominant position in these drills, and, you know, again, if you lose every single round, that sucks. But you at least get something positive to end class with. So that's how I structure my basic kids class, guys. I hope this helped you if you're interested in starting a kids program, or maybe you run a kids program, and, you know, I hope I gave you some ideas on what to do. If not, if you disagree with anything that I said, if you have a different system, please leave it in the comments. Let's discuss. Everybody runs things a different way. And of course, there's some methods out there that I don't use that, maybe I will use in the future because they're effective. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you share the video if you liked it. Make sure you subscribe if you're new. Click that notification bell. That way you guys get notified every time we have new content out there. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time.